This week we'll be going into chapter 2, looking at family issues. How did we get the way we are? I don't believe that anybody woke up in the morning and said, I know what I'm going to do when I grow up. I'm going to destroy my children. But many of us had really difficult experiences. So we're going to look at the process that goes on that leads us to hurt each other and how that operates. And also just really examine the language of survival, the control, fight, run that keeps us from intimacy and seeing each other, and begin to learn the language of love, the language that God gives us of love and acceptance. So this week is really very important in understanding who we have become and why we have become that way. Welcome back. We're getting ready to do some other things. You know, I don't think that my parents woke up one morning, or any of us woke up one morning and said, guess what I'm going to be when I grow up? I figured it out. I'm going to grow up and I'm going to get married and I'm going to have a bunch of kids and I'm just going to mess them all up. You know, I don't think anybody did that. In fact, most of us said, I will never do to my children what was done to me. And yet we find ourselves doing more of it than we wish we did at times. But it happens. And the things that happen in any group, and it can be a family, but it can also be a workplace, it can be a church, it can be anywhere, that happen. There's certain processes that go on that create a situation where people are not only destructive to themselves, but they're destructive to the people around them. And so we want to look now at how that looks. It's exactly the processes that go on in a cult. In Jonestown, it wasn't normal for people to feed themselves poison Kool-Aid and give it to their kids. It isn't normal for people to burn themselves up and burn their children up as they did in Waco, you know, with David Koresh. It's not normal, and yet it is. You know, given certain set of circumstances, we become very self and other destructive. And so you want to look at what is it that happens in there. And there's 4 basic steps that go into that brainwashing process that creates that. One of those is isolation. Anybody who stays around me very long will hear me say over and over again, isolation is the enemy of recovery. You cannot heal in isolation. And that doesn't just mean isolation from people, it means isolation from certain subjects. You know, if I want to brainwash you, I don't necessarily put you in a closet, although I may. Some people I'd rather not. But what I am going to do is I'm going to take you away from the truths that I don't want you to hear. So I'm going to take you away from people that will let you know a different truth. For instance, if I want you to learn German, I'll take you out of the English-speaking population, put you into a German-speaking population. And what begins to happen then is you're alone. You don't have anybody to tell you another language, so you start to feel different. You start to feel crazy. They can tell you you're crazy. You can't get your needs met. And one of the reasons we start to learn the language is that we are trying to get our needs met. You know, and so isolation is from other kinds of information. So if you look at what happens in a family or any system, a healthy family looks kind of like this. It has boundaries. It has places that fence posts that say you're a Jones or you're a Brown or you're a Smith or you're a Wardjanowski. I still think you should change it to Smith. But within those boundaries in a healthy family, you can come and go. You can go in and go out without changing your behavior a whole lot. So, you know, you kind of have integrity. The word integrity just means to integrate all parts of yourself. So integrity means you're the same person wherever you are. It's one of the things I love about my family today is we're pretty much who we are where we are. And so we don't have to change our behavior and start to not talk about certain subjects or not have to hide certain things from people because we don't like them. But coming and going is pretty easy. In an unhealthy family, you begin to close up these walls. And so now you have a certain set of behaviors that people do inside the house and another whole set of behaviors outside the house. This is the scream all the way at each other at church, to go into church, go in the church and, hi, we're here, and then screaming at each other all the way home. So this is the kind of incongruency, and stuff that we have. So in isolation, people can, families can come and go in healthy families, but in unhealthy families, what you find is that there's certain behaviors you have inside the house and certain behaviors outside the house. Sometimes people will say, I can't control my anger. And I'm like, do you do that outside the house? Do you yell at people on the street? Or, I can't stop my anger. Well, what happens when the doorbell rings? Do you keep on yelling? Because we know if you can stop it there, you can stop it here, and so that's a part of it. Hey, Christian, can you help me out a second?
Sure.
Okay, come on down. What are you doing up?
You told me to get up.
I didn't tell you to get up. What, you just get up and dance around in the middle of the floor like you're doing something?
You told me to come.
You just come take over? I did not tell you to come.
So what did you tell me?
I didn't tell you anything. You just jump up like that.
I was listening to what you said.
Are you telling me what I said? I didn't say that.
You just said, what did you say?
I said nothing. You just jump up and get in the middle of the room. I think something's wrong with you.
That's what you asked me to do. I'm doing what you asked me to do.
I didn't ask you to do anything. You are just being obnoxious and defiant, trying to take over everything.
So you didn't just ask me that?
I did not tell you to get out. In fact, go sit down.
Can I sit?
Of course you can sit.
Well, can you move?
I am not in your way.
I need to sit down.
I'm asking you to sit down.
Exactly. So
what is wrong with you? You are just so defiant. I think you're hopeless. You must be mentally ill. Absolutely. We need to take you to the doctor. Get some help for you. What does that feel like? Feel familiar? Because what I just did, I did tell you to get up. and I did tell you to sit down. And I did get in your way. But what I just did was humiliate you. And I can only do that because you know I already love you. But this is something that is so powerful that it doesn't take but about 1 minute to feel the effects of somebody denying their behavior and blaming you for it. Right. It only takes just a minute. So you can go ahead and sit back down. Thank you. But have fun first. Did you notice how quiet the rest of you got when we were doing that? Because in a family where somebody is being abusive and somebody is humiliating somebody else in the family, then everybody else is scared to interfere because it'll turn on me. It'll just make it worse. So he feels isolated and abandoned because not only is he alone, but inside his house, he's alone. There's an elephant in the middle of the living room, and everybody is pretending that the elephant isn't there. Everybody knows about the elephant. Everybody sees the elephant. But everybody pretends that the elephant isn't there, which leaves him out there by himself. So isolation is really about the no talk rule. You find that if you, down the road, if more than one family member gets into recovery situation, you found out all kinds of things that happened that you didn't know happened. You found out all kinds of things that all of you were feeling that nobody knew the others were feeling. You know, there's all kinds of assumptions we make about each other that, you know, that are just because that's what we think. So that's the first step in brainwashing. Second step is inhumane treatment. We all know in history how people have tortured people and broken them down. The purpose of the inhumane treatment, if I'm intentionally brainwashing you, is to break you down, to make you know that there's nothing you can do that will change what happens to you. It's to create a helplessness. So no matter what you do, you're not going to stop what's going to happen next. You know, there's all kinds of things. If you take an animal and, you know, they'll fight. You know, if they sense danger, they'll fight. But if that doesn't work, then they'll cower down and roll over. You know, there's a point of surrender. And so this is what that's designed for. In a human being, there's some things that happen. Let's say that Chris is my father, and Chris is beating me. I can't fight and I can't run. So sooner or later, I'm going to have to surrender to Chris. At that point, some things will happen. The first is I will transfer my well-being to Chris. Now, it no longer matters if I'm unhappy. It matters if Chris is unhappy. Because if Chris is unhappy, I'm in danger. It doesn't matter if I'm tired. It matters if Chris is tired. Because if Chris is tired, I'm in danger. So what happens is now I don't know how I am unless I know how Chris is. And so I will start to watch Chris. And I will start to, he comes in tired and I'll get a little anxious. What do I got to do for you? You know. So part of what happens is now that's transferred over there. The other thing that will happen that's very significant is I'll go numb. I'll start to feel like a robot. Any of you ever feel like a robot, just going through the motions, just doing the next thing? You don't have any particular feelings attached to it. And that psychic numbness is the no-feel rule. There's two kinds of basic abuses that are done. One is the traumas of deprivation. Those are things when you don't get what you need. Children need certain things in order to grow healthy. They need to be the twinkle in somebody's eye, so that when you walk in the room, somebody lights up. I'm so glad you're here. You know, they need to be held and touched. They found that babies that are just fed and clothed mechanically don't develop as healthy in the central nervous system. You know, children need boundaries. They say in the airline industry, first put your oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on your children. If parents don't have boundaries, then children can't learn boundaries. I remember as a child thinking, I wish somebody would tell me what to do. The boundary line keeps changing. Sometimes I come in at 9 o'clock and everybody is mad at me, and then I come in at 2 o'clock and everybody's happy. You know, and depending on the level of intoxication, you know, it's a very different thing. But nobody would give me anything I could stand on, you know, and so that was there. Children need instruction. This is how you be a man. This is how you be a woman. This is how you solve a problem. This is how you deal with anger. This is how you brush your teeth. This is what hygiene is. This is what sexuality is. You know, this is how you manage that. This is who God is. This is how you pray. This is what you do when you're hurting. You go, this is where you go. You know, so you need to learn how to be a person as you grow. And if everything is centered on trying to keep a peace that doesn't exist, then you're not going to get that instruction. You know, so, you know, that's there. Just basic things like food. we have 4,000 hungry children in Cleveland alone. We have huge numbers of people who don't have enough to eat because of whatever else is going on. You know, we have, sleep. It's hard to sleep when somebody's going to climb in bed with you, or when somebody is beating up your mother in the next room, or when, children, or when nobody's there and you're left alone because somebody's out partying. There's the traumas of deprivation. Don't get good medical care or dental care. So there's a lot of stuff that happens that falls into that trauma of deprivation that we don't talk about a lot because it's not stuff you can see necessarily, a lot of it. So that's there. Then the traumas of abuse. Words do hurt. Words stay with you. Most of it, how many of you can remember one or two sentences that was said to you, or a word name you were called when you were young, that still sticks with you today? I mean, I remember my father telling my mother, it's a good thing she's smart because she'll never be pretty. And I never in my life felt pretty. That's just something that sticks with you, as you grow. And words hurt, and some of the things that people are, that we say to each other and that are said to us are so cruel. And they stay. And you feel like sometimes when you say something you didn't mean to, it's like, words come back, but you can't take them back. Words are going to be out there. Physical abuse. A lot of people don't know they've been physically abused, but if I come over here and I jerk Chris up and I start to whale his butt, that is not discipline. That is punishment. Punishment is about control. Control is about, I'm going to make you do what I want you to do. Discipline is about, I'm going to teach you how to live. And it's done mostly by experience. You're looking at experience. So the whole idea of abuse, jerking kids around, pulling their hair, pinching them, hitting them. Some of the things that people do to children are just incredibly wrong. And, it is, when an angry adult hits a child, it is never discipline. It's so witnessing abuse. Some people feel like you're more traumatized by witnessing abuse than by being abused because you stay present in it longer. We were talking at lunch about how many times you feel like I should have been able to make somebody stop hitting my parent or hitting me. And I used to work with a lot of Marines, and I would say, there were abused little boys who thought I should have been able to protect my mother. And I always say, go to the playground, look at a 6-year-old boy, and tell me how he could have stopped a grown man from doing anything. Because you can't. But the breaking down, the helplessness to making a person feel they are. The next thing is inconsistency. And that's the unpredictability. It makes things unpredictable. It's think about it. If you had a parent who drank a lot, or parent comes home from work, going out and play, they're tired. You go out, they come back in, they've had a drink. Come on, tell me about your day. You think, all right. Go back out, you play, now they've had a couple more drinks. Oh, come sit on my knee, I'm just gonna buy you a bicycle tomorrow. You're the cutest kid. You think, I don't know what I did, but I got a bicycle out of it. You go back out and come back in. Now it's like they're slurring their speech. They're acting crazy. You go back out, you come back in. Now they're yelling and screaming. Go back out, you come back in. Now they're passed out. You wake up in the morning, get ready to go get your bicycle. I didn't tell you I was going to get you a bike. Now they're hungover. You have 6 or 7 parents coming out of the same body. And that is, and you don't know which one it is. So you learn to feel it. You don't bounce in the house from school and say, I'm home. You go in and you feel it. And then you react in the way in the mood du jour. The mood of the day controls the way you're going to behave, so you know how to act in there. It's also the difference between words and body language. I'm not angry. Well, okay. My mother's very favorite one was, y'all go ahead. I'm all right. Don't worry about me. I'm going to be fine. But you knew if you walked out the door, you're in trouble. But if you stay, they're going to say, I told you to go. You should have gone. But that's not true. It's also the difference in promising. There's a lot of promises that get made. It's saying that you don't feel what you feel. You don't hear what you hear. I wasn't drunk. I don't know what you're talking about. We've always been there for you. We've done everything for you. Of course, we've always loved you. So all of this is confusing. And you develop what's called hypervigilance. You're scanning the environment like you got a radar out there. Where's the enemy coming? And you expect it to come any minute now. Surely it's coming. And then you hyperreact. If a lion jumped out of the bush before, when the bush wiggles, you're going to jump, even if it's a bunny rabbit or a chicken. So you're going to do something. So this is the no trust rule. Pretty soon it doesn't matter how much you tell me I can be trusted. I mean, how much I tell you that you tell me that I can trust you. What does matter is that I'm going to keep watching. I'm not going to be able to turn away because I don't know what you're going to do. And I'm certainly not going to feel safe to talk to you. This is the no trust rule. So now you're not talking, you're not feeling, and you're not trusting. The last thing is indoctrination. Indoctrination is the party line. This is when you learn to speak German. This is when you learn the family authorized truth. These are the things we talk around here. These are the things we think around here. And they include things like, who are you? Are you a precious child of God or are you a piece of junk? Who are the good guys and the bad guys? What makes a man and what makes a woman? I have people come a lot of times and they'll say, they got beaten, and they'll say, but they were just trying to make a man out of me. I'm going to make you a man by beating you up. Making you tough is a very common kind of a thing. What is sexuality? How is that used? What is permissible? How do we think? And what can we talk about and what can't we talk about? And who gets to have needs around here? Is there just one person or does everybody get to have them? So this is the no think rule. This is when you learn German, and this is when Koresh can give you a match and you will burn yourself up. Or Jones can give you the Kool-Aid and you'll drink it. Because now you're not talking, feeling, trusting, or thinking, and what begins to happen is you become loyal to the captor. Everything becomes about keeping that peace that doesn't exist, avoiding the pain, avoiding the chaos. So what you're doing is you're paying attention there, loyalty to the captor. So if I ask Joy to go to dinner, she'll say, I'll have to ask Tom. Or if I say, let's go play a game, I don't think he'd like that. I've actually had one or two people come to this program in order to disqualify it so they could get their person back in isolation, or to come to church so they could disqualify church and get their person out. So I can join you only to get you away. That happens fairly frequently. So I'm loyal to the captor. And the other thing that happens is something called affect intolerance. At a certain level of fear, you will flip back to the original trauma state. Have you ever felt like you were that little child? You know, you're the little kid and you start to present like a little child or act like a little child. And if you ask yourself how big you are at those times, you'll find that you feel very small. And it's a true flashback, like a veteran has when a balloon pops and they hit the ground. You know, so it's a very powerful thing. If I have this as a fish tank, it is a fish tank. I'm sure y'all guessed that right away. You know, my artwork it's amazing to me. So this is a barracuda. This is a jar, and in the jar I have minnows. And the barracuda is hungry, and he sees the minnows in there, and so he keeps trying to get to them, and he keeps busting his nose. And pretty soon, what he's going to do is he's going to give up, because he's already learned he can't have those minnows. When he gives up, you can take this jar out, and a minnow can swim right through his mouth, and he will starve to death, because he's already learned I can't eat those minnows. Had a polar bear in the zoo, and they didn't finish his space yet, so they put him in his cage. He's walking up and down. A few months later, they finish this beautiful space for him. What does a polar bear do? Walks up and down where the cage was. He already knows his boundaries. You know, you take a mouse and you dump it in a jar, and the mouse is going to try to get out of the water. But if you hold him in your hand until he stops struggling, he'll sink like a rock. It's a bad thing to do to a mouse. So it's a bad thing to do to a barracuda. I used to have a movie of this. It was terrible. That little fish, but it's a very, very powerful thing, and you cannot get out of it by yourself. There's no way that you can do it. The reverse of it is kind of what works. First, you start talking, and everybody that is here is already doing that. You're beginning to talk about what goes on, what happened to you, what it was really like for you. And when you do start talking, you'll feel like you're betraying people. I know the first few years I talked about what happened in my family, I felt like I was betraying my parents. My parents loved me, but they had a horrible disease that killed them, and it almost killed me. And it's talking. Healing cannot happen in a lie. Healing can only happen in the truth. God is truth. He cannot get into a lie. So we can go right up to the edge of truth. He'll come right up to the edge of truth for us, but then he'll say, you have to come over here for me to heal you. You have to get into the truth for me to heal you. I can't heal you out there. So we have to start talking. Feeling is, sometimes we're scared of our feelings. We close the door that we are afraid to open again because we almost didn't get it closed. So we are often afraid of our feelings. But one of the things remember when you're doing this kind of stuff is that anything that happened to you is already done. It cannot hurt you today. It has no power any real power over your life. All of the things are in your mind that could hurt you about what happened to you in the past. So in a war, people cannot feel. You can't let yourself feel. You're on the battlefield, bullets are flying everywhere. You can't stop and feel scared or feel angry or feel anything, When the battle is, and so the feelings and the action get separate from each other. So all you're doing when you're healing is putting the feelings back on the original thing where they belong, so you don't take it out on everybody in your present life. So that's what we're trying to do, is put our feelings and our experiences back together again so that they can be. So it's funny, in some tribal things you'll see people doing, like after the hunt, they'll do rituals where they dance around the campfire and stuff. And I think that's a way of doing that. They're allowing themselves to feel the battle, for change. Trust is something that it's one of the big reasons we need God. We can trust God We can't really trust each other. Even Jesus said, I don't trust humans, I know what's in their heart. But what we can do is we can trust God to be with us no matter what happens in our life. He is not going to leave us, He is not going to forsake us, and He will always make provision for whatever happens. You know, the other thing about trust, I was taught by some of my baby felons in prison. We were doing a trust circle where you stay like this and you go around the circle and they pass your body around. And one little guy wouldn't get in it, and then he kind of got peer pressured in it. And I said, why won't you get in there? But I didn't say, he was kind of peer pressured. So he gets in there and he's being passed around, and somebody dropped him. And he got up and he's like this. And I'm thinking, my goodness, I'm in prison. I'm going to have a murder. And, you know, it was like, but we got it all calmed down. And I said, why wouldn't you get in the circle in the first place? And he said, you know, I'm in here, not in these words necessarily. He said, I'm in here because I killed somebody. He said, I know that I can lose my temper and kill somebody. And he said, I was afraid if I trusted somebody and they betrayed me, that I'd kill them. And that was exactly his first instinct, you know. So I thought, how does that apply to me? And I thought about, you know, when I trusted somebody and they betrayed me, what I would do is I would hurt me. I would go get drunk. I would go pick up somebody. I would go move. I would go do something that was self-destructive. And I thought, well, if I want to trust other people, I can't trust other people. That's putting too much burden on them. What I need to be able to trust is my response to other people. That no matter what you do, I'm not going to hurt me and I'm not going to hurt you intentionally. If I can take charge of my response to people, then I can trust almost anybody, because I'm not going to give you my well-being. You know, I'm not going to put my well-being and my behavior in your hands. So that's, trust is a big thing. And then we have to think, what this ends up is we are conceptually incarcerated. You know, we are imprisoned in our mind. You know, and even though the danger is over, we're still acting like we're in it because we're stuck back there. And so we still act that way. And so if I'm going to change that, then I have to learn a new language. Growing up in, I call it growing up in crazy. Growing up in really dysfunction is you learn the language of survival. And what the language of survival is control, fight, run. When you're real little, you figure out a way that you can be safe. You figure out a way that you can make it through. You figure out a way to survive. Children are amazing. I'm always just like, how the heck did everybody get here? I mean, you think about what some of you have been through. You think about what life has done, and how in the world did you get here? You know, and children are very creative. And so it's really thinking about, what do we do? You know, how do we control things? And that's where all that control stuff comes from. And if it gets out of control, then we either fight or we run. I'm a runner. Learning to stay for me was incredibly difficult. I moved 18 times in my daughter's first 18 years. You know, I mean, I'm out of here. And I still fight that every once in a while. I mean, I'm so old I can't even hobble out of here. But you know, it's like something will happen and I'm like, I'm out, I'm gone. You know, and then I have to think it through and say it's not really a good idea, you know, to do those things. But it is so automatic for me. If I feel that loss of control, clank down, I'm out of here. You know, and I had to think it through. What God offers us is an opportunity to learn the language of love. And the language of love is incredibly different from the language of survival. For one thing, when you're in the language of survival, you cannot be close to anybody. You cannot make relationships healthy and peaceful. You cannot really be with other people. The language of love offers us an opportunity to learn compassion, to learn mercy, to learn forgiveness, to learn peace, to learn to accept each other and not be judgmental, to be able to embrace our individual differences in a way that we can't do it in the language of survival. And to really reach out beyond ourselves and not make it all about what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, what you're doing to me. And then we can begin to reach out and say, how can I encourage you? So the language of love is very different, but it is a different language. And in any language, if I said, you're going to Germany next week and you're going to know perfect German and have perfect ways of communication and know perfect habits of German, you're going to laugh at me, right? You know you can't do that. And yet, if you think the language of survival, that's a pretty strong word. If I want to live, this is the language I have to speak. So now I'm telling you to give that up, and come over here and speak the language of love. First you learn a word, then you learn a phrase or two, then you learn a little bit more fluent. But even now, I've been in recovery for 42 years. Sometimes I think I haven't, but I've been doing something for 42 years. But in that 42 years, there are still so many times when something will happen really quick, and I'll go back to that language of survival. It's our first language. So having patience with yourself and each other and compassion is a really good idea.